The evening sky was quiet, fading from soft gold into tender shades of violet, as if the heavens themselves wanted to whisper something gentle to the world below. Sarah stood by her window, watching the sun lower behind the distant hills, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea she hadn't really touched. Her heart felt heavy, like there was a weight pressing against her chest that no one could see. Life had been difficult lately, more than difficult. It felt like burden after burden was being stacked, one atop another, without pause or mercy. Her job hours had been cut. Her savings were thinning out far too quickly. Relationships that once brought warmth now felt like echoes. Even her prayers felt quiet. She prayed, but she wondered if God had gone silent. She wondered if perhaps he was busy with better people, stronger people, people who didn't tremble at night wondering how they would make it to tomorrow. She let out a breath that felt more like a sigh than anything else. God, are you still here? She whispered. No thunder rolled in answer. No ray of sun broke dramatically through clouds. No miracle appeared in her hand. Only the steady ticking of the clock filled the room. But sometimes, God speaks differently. That night, Sarah drifted into sleep with tears still resting in the corners of her eyes. And in that sleep, she found herself standing beside a calm river. The water moved gently, not rushing, not loud, but steady and patient, like something that held eternity in its flow. The air was warm, filled with a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She looked down and saw her reflection. She looked tired, yes, but she also saw something else that startled her. She saw light behind her eyes. Not bright, not overwhelming, but steady, like a candle that refused to go out no matter how strong the wind had blown. And then she heard a voice. Not a voice from outside her. Not a voice that came from the sky. It was a voice from within, yet not her own. Everything will be fine. The words did not sound like a vague promise. They didn't sound like a shallow comfort. They sounded like truth, like something spoken by one who had already walked through her future and returned just to reassure her. Everything will be fine, the voice repeated. Not because circumstances will always be easy. Not because life will never trouble you. But because I am with you. Sarah's heart trembled. The river reflected the sky, and in its surface she saw moments of her life, moments she had forgotten. Times she cried and thought she was alone, yet somehow strength had returned when she needed it most. Times she feared losing everything, yet somehow she survived. Times she thought she would break, but something had held her together. Something unseen. Someone. You have thought I was silent, the voice said softly. But I was holding you. You have feared you were forgotten, but I have carved your name upon my palm. You have believed all was falling apart, but I have been preparing something greater than you imagined. As Sarah listened, the heaviness inside her chest began to loosen, like a knot gently unraveling. Tears formed. Not from sorrow this time, but from something deeper. Relief, recognition, hope. You have grown through every struggle, the voice continued. You have learned compassion. You have learned patience. You have learned to reach for me. And now, I am lifting you from the valley. You are coming out of this, not by your strength alone, but by my love and my promise. The river shimmered. Everything will be fine, the voice repeated slowly, each word filled with warmth, certainty, and love. I am not finished with your story. You will rise again. You will smile again. You will feel peace again. What was lost will be restored. What was broken will be healed. A breeze moved through the air, not cold, not warm, just perfectly comforting. And Sarah woke up, but this time, the room didn't feel empty. The silence didn't feel hollow. The weight on her chest wasn't crushing her anymore. She didn't have all the answers. Her challenges were still real. But something within her had changed. She touched her heart and whispered the words as if sealing them deep inside her soul. Everything will be fine. The next morning, Sarah woke before the alarm. The room was still dim, the world still quiet, yet something in her felt different, as though a soft light had been lit inside her chest, steady and unwavering. She sat up slowly, placing her feet on the floor, and breathed in deeply. The air tasted the same. The room looked the same. The problems she faced were still real. Yet the way she felt within them had changed. The memory of the dream lingered, not like a fading shadow, but like a truth anchored into her spirit. She didn't try to analyze it or question it. She didn't explain it away. She simply accepted that God had spoken to her, not in thunderous miracles or blinding signs, but in the quiet way he often does when the soul is desperate enough to finally hear. She stood, walked to the window, and opened the curtains. The morning sky was still soft, the horizon painted in pale orange and gold. It looked gentle, kind, like a new beginning. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she whispered, not with fear, but with trust. "Thank you." The day unfolded with the same challenges as before, but her heart faced them differently. When she opened her email, she found notices, invoices, reminders, things that once would have caused panic. But instead of feeling crushed, she breathed. She remembered the voice. She remembered the river. She remembered that she wasn't carrying everything alone. "Everything will be fine." The words echoed quietly, not loud, not forced, not frantic, just true. She moved through her day with a calmer mind. She made phone calls she had been avoiding. She organized her schedule. She updated her resume and applied for jobs she once believed were beyond her reach. Not because she suddenly felt powerful or confident, but because she finally understood she didn't need to be perfect. She only needed to take the next step, trusting God with the rest. And that was enough. Days passed. Some were easier. Some were harder. There were still moments where worry tried to return, where old fears whispered in the back of her mind. But every time, she paused, closed her eyes, and remembered the river, the voice, the warmth. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. One afternoon, she received a call from a company she had applied to long ago, so long that she had nearly forgotten. The voice on the other end sounded warm and encouraging. They had reviewed her application again. They wanted to schedule an interview. A real opportunity. A door that had once been closed now stood open. Her heart beat fast, but not with fear, with something like joy resurfacing, cautious but rising. She agreed to the interview and hung up the phone. She sat still, stared ahead, and let the moment settle into her bones. This wasn't coincidence. This was alignment. This was timing. This was God. When the interview day arrived, she felt nervous but not overwhelmed. She dressed carefully, spoke honestly, and didn't try to pretend she was someone she wasn't. She trusted that if God opened this door, he would walk her through it. When she left the building that day, she didn't know the result yet. But she felt peaceful. That peace itself felt like a victory. A few days later, she got the call. She had been chosen. The job was better than her previous one, better pay, better environment, more room to grow. It was exactly what she needed. Not too much, not too little, just right, exactly when it was needed. And Sarah wept. Not from stress this time, not from exhaustion, not from fear, but from gratitude. In the days that followed, she began rebuilding her life slowly, step by step. She budgeted, she rested, she allowed herself to heal. She reached out to friends she had withdrawn from. She let herself laugh again. Not loud at first, just softly. But laughter nonetheless. There were still things to work through. No miracle erased every struggle. But life no longer felt like a storm she was drowning in. Instead, it felt like a journey she could walk, hand in hand with a God who saw her, knew her, and loved her deeply. And every so often, she found herself back at the window as the sun set, holding a cup of tea that grew cold because she was lost in thought. But now, the weight on her chest did not crush her. It reminded her of where she had been and how far she had come. One such evening, as the sky glowed soft and golden once more, she whispered into the warm quiet. "I see what you were doing. Even when I didn't understand. Even when I thought I was alone. You were working. You were guiding. You were holding me." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. Peace settled in her heart like a blessing placed gently, intentionally, lovingly. And she understood now. The message had never been about life becoming perfect. The message was about never walking alone. Because when God says everything will be fine, it doesn't mean nothing difficult will ever happen. It means that through every difficulty, every tear, every valley, every moment of doubt, he will be there, strengthening, guiding, restoring, lifting. Sarah closed her eyes and breathed in deeply. Her life was no longer defined by fear. It was defined by faith. And with that, she stepped forward, not into a perfect life, but into a life held securely by God. Everything had not changed at once. But she had. And that made everything new. Everything will be fine.